Hello. Today I will be commentating on a ship that many people have requested that I revisit, which is of course Tier 7 Russian DD, the Kiev. It's actually, a commentary on the ship was actually one of the things that made my YouTube quite popular back in the day. And going back to the ship now, I must admit that it really has been nerfed, I think, a bit too heavy-handedly. This ship obviously has eaten the nerf bat in multiple different ways. There's the shell, there's the detection range when shooting, there's the reduced fire chance, and then to my surprise there's the reduced HP pool, which is pretty brutal, honestly. You see that my HP pool is actually 12.8k, and this is a fully upgraded Kiev. And unlike on the Mayhem, where you can take the HP buff, because you can just smoke fire and such, you don't really need the range buff. On the Kiev you have to get AFT for the range buff. And I'm against T8 matchmaking as well, so this low HP pool really punishes you heavily, and it really forces you to play extraordinarily safe. And well, playing safe is something I never do. A good example here, charging into the cap. In general, you shouldn't really be the guy charging into caps. I do it here because I can get in cover behind this island. That's my plan. But one of the weaknesses, smoking up and slowing down, and I get hit by 2 Turpit's penetrations. And I was angled so that they ended up being full penetrations and not just overpens. And you see how heavily just a 6k hit from a battleship, how heavily it impacts my game now. I'm literally down to half HP. I took 2 unlucky shells from one battleship, bam, down to half HP. And when you fight other DDs, like the Mayhem for example, it becomes exceptionally painful because the Mayhem of course can get the HP buff instead of going for AFT, so he's gonna have like almost 17k HP and you're with 12.8. So if you do push into caps and contest it, if the Mayhem knows what he's doing, then the Mayhem can actually wreck you, especially if he times his smokes well. He smokes up, forces you to smoke up, and then he just waits in his smoke. You'll have to move first because your smoke lasts a shorter duration. There's like all these advantages, so the Kiev is no longer the top dog, I would say, at T7 by any means. There's of course all the additions. There's the Leningrad that has, for some reason the Leningrad has 8 km torps while you only have 4 km torps, and there's of course the Bliska, which is a stealth firing god. Torps, gonna have to accelerate here as quickly as I can. Of course always turn into the torps so you can swing your stern around. Okay, no worries there. I naturally of course spam HE while I cap this objective. I did get what I wanted, which was the cap, and I started a few fires, harassing a few battleships. Not really much, but some sort of harassment. I don't really want to shoot at the dog yet. I want to gain some distance before I start firing on him. Now actually the island is between me and him, he's gonna have a hard time hitting. And Atago's shell velocity isn't really that terrifying as long as you gain distance, because Atago HE damage is deadly. So, oh god, and he's being smoked up as well. Yeah, now it's just time to bail. Now it's just time to bail. Someone is asking if El Gringo Potato is Flamu, which means I probably have to change name on this guy soon. A lot of people are recognizing this guy now. It's kind of like when this guy used to be named Umalf, and everyone recognized him after a while, so I changed it to Gringo Potato, and looks like I'll have to change it again. But of course, here's something that you should never do as a Benson, and this is something you love as a Kiev. He engages me. Naturally, I'll start kiting away, and I'm keeping this juicy, let's say 9-10 kilometer distance, and I have a huge advantage. You see, he hasn't landed a single shell on me. That's because US arcs are incredibly hard to hit with at this distance on something as fast as a Kiev. Whereas you, on the other hand, well, I took half his HP in that exchange, and I took no damage at all. So that's why I fundamentally always argue that when you fight a USDD, you should always turn away from them and shoot backwards. Kite away and shoot backwards like I did just there. That's the fundamental way of fighting USDDs. You increase the distance and you spam him from range, and that way he has a very hard time hitting you, whereas you, with your much improved shell velocity and better arcs, have a much easier time of hitting him. Broadside Atago means of course gonna spam some AP on him as I sail into cover. I would never do this unless there was cover here, because of course Atago HE, very painful and something you don't want to experience. Here's one of the downsides, of course. You saw there of having all the great speed that the Russian DDs have. They are very slidey. You saw the way my stern almost slid into that rock and almost grounded me and like stopped my speed briefly there. And that's one of the reasons why I always argue that you must have vigilance on Russian DDs. I have it on the Khabarovsk as well. I just noticed where my team is. Okay, is this weekend? It looks like weekend. Look at my team. They're all on the 9 and 10 line, hiding in the rocks. Oh god. Well, this is obviously going to be a harder game than the score suggests. Suggests. See, I can't speak. Sorry about that. And of course, I'm forced to play extremely safe now because I lost all my HP at the start. I was down to half HP, so I have to play a very safe style of Kiev, which is, of course, abusing your range and your arcs as much as possible, and of course your rapid reload and just harassing from max range, which exactly what I'm doing here. And something, it's good to learn this now because this becomes incredibly important on the next ship, the Tashkent, because long range harassment is something that ship is forced to do, even more so than the Kiev. The Kiev already is kind of forced to long range harassment because of its terrible 8.7 km concealment, but the Tashkent is a bigger and clumsier ship, so it has a harder time evading shells, so that long range is something you definitely want to be using. Here, however, I see a smoke left by the nearby DD, so of course if there's a friendly smoke you should always try to scavenge them, because you only have 3 smokes and they don't last very long, and when you're this low HP you kind of want to have them as an oh shit kind of thing instead of just purely offensive. So I see a bunch of DD smokes here, so I'm just going to sail into them instead. Always scavenge friendly smokes if you can, because of course you benefit just as much as anyone else from these smokes, and it saves you using up one of your own. It's also very nice if that's why I always recommend supporting friendly DDs. That's something the Russian DDs are very good at. You see a friendly DD push into a smoke and you sail behind him. He spots the enemy DD spots him, and then you suddenly pop up like right behind him and start opening fire. And if your friendly DD smokes up, you can go into his smoke and so forth. There's a very good synergy with this ship in supporting, but in general pushing into caps and being the guy capping isn't advisable, which you saw at the very beginning of this commentary when I pushed into B to cap, and I got instantly punished for it because I got spotted so early because of the terrible concealment, and I lost. Your HP pool is so small that when I just taken 6k damage was half my HP pool, and I've been having to play extremely safe ever since I lost that HP. Now of course to spot the pretty juicy morsel. This Shakaku has not been paying attention. He notices it now, of course, that he's been sailing into some huge trouble here, but he probably clicked the move command and then forgot about it. It happens surprisingly often. You give a move command and then you do something else, you focus on something else. Like, well, it happens a lot to newer carriers in general. Like, the experienced ones always glance at the minimap so often that they always keep track of their own position. But even they can make this mistake. Hell, I've seen it in even competitive play in Clan Wars, people forgetting about their positioning and such. And that's of course partly due to the carrier UI being exceptionally bad in this game. It's laggy and unresponsive and randomly gives commands you don't really want it to give and so forth. So this happens quite a bit, but of course if it does happen, then you should naturally take advantage of it. You notice I'm sailing kind of away. I'm not actually trying to close the distance too aggressively with this Shikaku. That's because I have more than enough range. I'm trying to make sure that I don't close the distance too much with the battleships you can see on, what is it, C6, C7. So as you can see, I have no issues melting him from here. So why close the distance? Now someone was kind enough to smoke up, so I'm just going to park myself in the smoke, because why not? There's a cruiser pushing up from the north, which I might honestly melt. Actually, I might go for my double strike. I have 2 fires that Shikaku can't repair, so he's going to die very soon. And if I kill this York as well... Of course, AP is good against broadsiding cruisers, but if they angle like this and they're low HP, might as well do this to them. He is burning still to death. I don't think those shells have even time to land. Oh, nice, actually got the double strike. That's always good. Atago, he's turning broadside, so obviously I switched to AP. HE does fairly decent damage, and your fire chance is pretty okay, but if you get broadsides, it's almost always recommendable to use AP. Of course, in this case I'm getting overpens or misses, which is not exactly the best example course, I'm still using a friendly smoke. I haven't used one of my own. I still have one of my own ready in case this starts fading. So I'm keeping an eye out for that detection signal popping up all of a sudden. He turned, he angled, that's why I switched briefly to HE, and now he's giving broadside again, so I switched back to AP. There we finally get some of those decent volleys. Oh, there we go, my smoke faded, I'm popping my own. He spotted me briefly, you saw him turn towards me, but my smoke hit me again. He is most likely torping though. I would be very surprised if he wasn't torping this smoke right now. The torps of course have some travel time, so I don't need to panic escape the smoke just yet. I have more than enough time to hammer this guy a bit. Oops, reversed out of my own smoke, but there is the torps. Yeah, I was in full reverse the entire time because of course where I had last been seen there are his torpedoes as expected. With speed boost and turning I should be able to gain enough distance. Oh, actually might be cutting this a bit close. Let's drop the speed. Totally didn't cut that close at all. Okay, that was a bit unnecessary considering I knew those were coming. It was very telegraphed. If you're smoked up next to an Atago, I mean, you haven't been playing this game at all if you're not expecting torpedoes. But this safe style is kind of what you have to do, or have to utilize quite a lot with the Kiev these days. The reductions in HP pool have just hampered it so much that you simply have to use this, you have to just use much more ranged, safer style than you did in the past. In the past, like, I was significantly more aggressive in the ship, and I tried using that style when I got back to the ship, but the nerfs have just hit it too hard. They clearly don't want that style, which is kind of strange to me because it was honestly one of the most fun styles and one of the most fun ships. I still think the ship is quite fun, but it's significantly more punishing these days. It doesn't really let you get away with that brawling fun that you used to have in the past. But now you are pretty much a light cruiser with a smoke that sits very far back and mostly spams HE. Honestly, I found myself using more and more HE on this ship, simply because the further you are away, the harder it is to get any sort of significant damage with the AP, so just using HE to get those juicy fires started. Which is, I don't know, it's not as enjoyable as it was in the past, but then again, I've done like almost 100k damage in a 30-minute game, and considering the horrid start that I had, absolutely getting wrecked going in for the cap. Not too that bad. I haven't actually lost any HP, so you see the difference in playstyle. I answered that guy who said, "Are you Flamu?" I answered him now. If I had died, then I would obviously not have answered him. The game is about to end, there's not really much they can do. They're kind of like just hiding in over here in the corners and in the caps or whatever. And the game ended. So, you saw how quickly pushing in and trying to get close punished me. But you saw how I was still able to farm consistent damage and XP later on simply by keeping my distance. You have to consider this was against almost purely T8s. Like, look at my team. There's like 10 T8s and then there's me at the top with my T7 Kiev. So this was very unfavorable matchmaking. In T7 you can obviously be more aggressive, but I figured I'd take one of the worst case scenarios to show people how you can still make consistent XP with the ship, even if it's not your friend. There you can see the two turret shells that did all the damage at the start. Anyway, let's move on to the build part. Right, as usual, I will start with the modules. Now, honestly, even though the hull upgrade is quite nice, if you don't have AFT, you really must get the range upgrade. If you have AFT, then it's a bit debatable, but I still think the range upgrade is the safer choice because it gives you more utility and more safety if you go low HP, just as I did. But the hull upgrade is of course very good as well. Personally, I recommend range, then hull straight after. The hull upgrade gives you rudder shift, and most importantly it gives you HP, which is something you need actually starve for. The torpedo upgrade is something I honestly never could be bothered with on this ship. I mean, you can get it, but it's 10k credit, 10k XP and 800k credits, but ultimately it just gives you about 3k damage per torp at a bit slower torps. It gives you no additional range, and you already have 2x5, meaning you can launch 10 torpedoes, and honestly if you YOLO someone and you don't manage to kill them in those 10 torps, then I'm not certain the small damage increase would really help you in that case anyway. You should be able to handle it with man. Consumable wise, I recommend at least the premium smoke generator because it gives you one additional one as well as reducing the cooldown. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, aiming system mod 1, and finally, of course, propulsion mod, because losing engine is the worst thing that can happen because you will glide out of smokes, and rudder shift. Captain perks wise, basic firing training, last stand, vigilance for that sliding thing I mentioned, which is why reacting to torpedoes early is very important in this, and finally AFT. I'm of course saving up to my usual 3x4 build that I like on Russian DDs, which means I want both survivability expert and demolition expert to follow this up. Which one I will take first isn't actually that straightforward though. Demolition expert is nice, it's a pretty good increase in DPS and it makes you significantly stronger, but considering how squishy the ship has felt, survivability expert might also be good. But I leave that up to your choice, and this was my updated Kiev commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.